Guermantes, how significant is this new agreement that the Philippines is signing with U.S. allies?
So it's an enhancement of the current mutual defense treaty. And so what they're doing is they're defining how to deal with an aggressive communist China actions in the what I call the Southeast Asian Sea. They call it the West Philippine Sea. So I think it's really good, and I think it will be useful for other countries in the region to see how the U.S. and the Philippines deal with this aggressive actions by the People's Liberation Army Navy.
Professor Yan, do you feel that this will deter further Chinese aggression?
Well, I think, U.S. has a lot of bilateral, security pact with Asian countries, with Japan, with Korea, with Philippines, but it's not a multilateral. So, in other words, if Philippines and China had a military conflict, U.S. might want to come, but Japan is not in any obligation to do it. It's not NATO. So that's why earlier we heard about the talk about a Asia-led NATO, or we talk about all kinds of, including Australia and New Zealand, they have their own pact with the U.S., but they don't have pact with the Philippines. So that's why we keep talking about Indo-Pacific, but there is no real security pact yet. So this is the first step. Maybe the regional country, the allies of the U.S., instead of saying we all have bilateral ties with the U.S., how about us? Maybe we should have some kind of tie. But that is very difficult. So this is only probably the first step, maybe seen by Beijing as some kind of deterrence, but I'm not sure whether it's going to be very useful right now, unless you have a true bilateral or multilateral security pact, then it would be different.
What do you say to that, Guermantes?
Well, first of all, in general, you're correct, but I would say that last year, when President Biden, Prime Minister Kishida, and President Yoon met in Washington, they created a trilateral security arrangement. And currently, the U.S., the Philippines, and Japan are discussing the same thing. And so it is moving forward, and it already has a reality beyond the bilateral, the hub and spoke concept. And many countries in the region are doing spoke-to-spoke relationships. For example, Japan has a security arrangement with Australia, with India.
So with or without the U.S.?
Without the U.S. And so they're independently creating these other, what we call spoke-to-spoke alliances that have nothing to do with the U.S., but they are the common allies of the U.S., but they're developing these cross-connecting security arrangements in case something happens in the Indo-Pacific region.
It's interesting you mentioned spoke-to-spoke because Japan and the Philippines and Taiwan are actually all on the first island chain, and they're connected to each other. And given how there's a common aggressor right next to these three countries, do you feel there's going to be more involvement with the Taiwanese, given that many say the #1 threat from China is actually on Taiwan or at Taiwan?
So I believe that the U.S. is setting up the security arrangements to develop that. For example, this year in the National Defense Authorization Act of 2024, the U.S. has invited Taiwan to RIMPAC. It's a massive military exercise. 2 years ago, it was with 40 countries. And so this is an indicator that the U.S. is bringing in Taiwan into its alliance structure. And so I think by having this trilateral agreement that's already in place with South Korea, Japan, and U.S., and then another trilateral, U.S., Japan, and the Philippines, and bringing in Taiwan to these military exercises, we're seeing a movement of what you just said.